start today by reading you something. I'm going to read you two excerpts from student writing. There's going to be student A and student B. So here is a short little excerpt of writing from student A. Probably the time I was most surprised was when I went to Universal Studios. We went to the Revenge of the Mummy ride. It was so loud and dark when suddenly the cart I was on dropped way down. Then one of the souls in the ride told us something didn't heard. And we were launched back, followed by exciting ups and downs. It was really cool, but I would never ride again. So that is student A. And now let me read to you from student B's writing. Silence, simply silence. It seems that silence is my only friend. I have many names: the dead boy, the ghost, the weird kid. They're all mine, but they're not me. I'm just David, just David. It's okay. I've been alone all these years. Why should I stop? Doctors diagnosed me with apraxia when I was just 5 years old. Apraxia is the inability and struggle of the brain to command activities, which among them include talking. I learned too it was caused by a tumor on my brain. I'm not afraid of death, although I'd rather keep living for now. I struggle to study or shower or even eat. My brother says one day I will find a real friend. I doubt that very much. Also, friendships are complicated. I'd rather watch TV or the sunset. I'll stop there. It keeps going on and on. And you might be thinking, yeah, this happens. We ended up in a class with students with a high range of abilities. And how do we teach kids at such different ends of the spectrum of their ability to write? But what if I told you that those were not student A and student B? This was just one student. It's the same student. The student at the beginning of the year and the student about 6 months later. He's also an English language learner. His name is not David. And that second story, I told them that the standard says that they can write a narrative that is real or imagined. And I told them that if they write a story that feels so real that I don't even know if it was imagined or not, then they could do it. So he wanted to write a story about this kid named David. I think it was someone that he knew. So he knew some information about apraxia and stuff like that. But the way that I got there with this particular student was using a structured workshop method where we did skills practice over and over and over again, so that once we got to this point where they could write a narrative story like this, they had so many tools in their toolbox and they could pull it out and just nail this narrative writing. Before I get into this topic of when to teach a narrative essay, for those of you who are new to the podcast, I am Robin Mellum. I'm an ELA teacher, children's book author, a curriculum creator. I'm also a big fan of structured writing. And so today's episode, it might ruffle a few feathers, and I apologize for that in advance, but I do want you to at least consider some of the things that I'm bringing up and that may be true for you. And I'm going to give you a little challenge at the end. I want to talk about the order in which you teach an essay. And if you're starting your year off with the first essay being narrative writing, it could be that you're doing this backward. And it's only because personal narrative writing has become like the default thing that we do when they come to school in the fall. It's sort of like a pumpkin spice latte, right? It's like familiar, it's traditional, it always shows up in the fall, but it's not the most like effective way to start off your writing in the year at the beginning of the year. And I want to tell you why I found it to be troublesome. There were a few years there that I taught 8th grade, and in this particular situation, all the 8th graders had to write a memoir that first quarter. So we had to start them pretty much in September. So it was like the first big thing that they did. And it hurt my heart because I didn't want to assign this to them. because they were so stressed over it. And the ones that did it well were students who already were really good writers. Like in the past, they were successful, came into eighth grade. They're like, yeah, I can write this memoir. The other ones struggled so much because we hadn't gotten through any kind of writing skills. We just sort of had gotten started. And yet this was going to be graded and it felt personal. And some of the kids were doing like really serious stuff. Like by the time you get to eighth grade, you're totally ready to dig into something deep. But I found that my eighth graders didn't, a majority of them, not all of them, the majority of them actually did not want to write about themselves. Some of them, their home lives are not great and they didn't want to go into it. Some of them, they're not feeling emotionally safe enough to go deep. They don't know me yet. And to write a really good narrative piece of writing, it requires you to go to an emotional depth. I don't want them writing just one time I went to the beach, one time I went to Universal, and one time I went to Disney. That's not insightful. That is a travel log. That is a different skill. So actually writing a narrative requires a symphony of skills. It requires every instrument that you can imagine. So I hadn't earned the trust from them yet. And I just wanted them to know in my mind, like, it's okay, just try. And honestly, I was I was tired of it, and that's when I requested a change to 6th grade because I don't know why, but the 8th grade at my school, they were like forcing everyone to do the same thing at the exact same time, but not so in 6th grade. So I was like, bye, see, I'm going to 6th grade. Here we go. Now with this 6th grade group, I love 6th grade. They're awesome. I was able to kind of step back a little bit and take a look at the whole big picture. And I flipped the order of what we were doing and it changed everything. And so I just want you to consider, is the order that I'm teaching helping or hindering their growth? So let me tell you how I order essays throughout the year. The first one that we do is a fable. And the reason is because we can take very simple language and then extrapolate from that into higher level language. So we're reading short tales, and it wasn't just like The Hare and the Rabbit. Like we had these other really cool ones, Cato's Wall, and then there was one called, there's one about this prison, like the magic prison. I'll have to look it up. Hold on, I'm going to pause and look it up. Aha, yes, I was right. See, that pause wasn't too painful for you. It's called The Magic Prison. So look that up. It's amazing. It's not short, but it's long enough to really dig deep into it. And it's a prison where the windows in the prison become mirrors. It is an absolute trip and it gets deep. And so from there, we're able to talk about story structure, but we can talk about it in an easy way. Like somebody wanted but so then, right? So we could talk about, okay, who's our main character? What is it that they want? What happened? That's the conflict. So we could sort of get the idea of what story structure elements are included in this. And then, with a fable, you talk about, well, what's the moral? What's the lesson? And they pick up on, I don't know why, but when you're doing a fable, they're like, oh yeah, the lesson is blah, blah, blah. So later, when we move into other literature, we can say that is what theme is. So remember, we talked about this in your fable unit. So a lot of teaching and writing is simply going back to what we've already done and then stretching them from there. So when you do the plot structure of a fable, the somebody part would be like the exposition, and wanted would be the rising action, and but would be the climax or the big conflict, and then falling in resolution. So it's all there. They just learn it in this really simple way. It's low stakes. There's shorter stories. And so it's like a easy way to access literature. And I have them write their own fable, which they love to do because they are writing from the point of view of an animal. And this animal can interact with other animals or something, and the animal has to learn something. Now, remember I said most of writing is just pulling on what we've already done. At the beginning of the year, we've done a voice lesson. So they've practiced how to give voice to something other than a human. They used really obscure objects in the room. But this time I say, now you're going to give voice to an animal. You've done this before. You did a great job with all your emotional reactions and all these specific nouns, and you're going to use that in your. So that type of essay at the beginning of the year is something that they can dig into. They can really, when they're thinking about an animal's experience and not their own, it's not their own personal story. It's just this animal learning a lesson. And that's one thing we would do is just brainstorm different lessons, how to not be selfish, how to be kind. It's important to do this. It's important to do that. Or I tell them you should do this. You shouldn't do that. That could be your moral or your lesson. So we would kind of brainstorm those, and then they would create their story around whatever their lesson or moral was going to be. Now, after we've done that essay, our next one that comes up is a literary essay, which I know that sounds like a big jump. However, if you pick the right novel to use for this, it's totally doable. So we in sixth grade, we picked The Wizard of Oz, which is funny because we didn't even know Wicked was going to be coming out or anything. The kids later got super excited, but the original Wizard of Oz, it's an amazing book, and there's a lot more in there than is in the movie. And we did a compare and contrast essay afterwards. We also watched the movie, and none of them had seen the movie. None of them. And I was like, but I grew up in that movie. Like, that's my life. I can't believe this. So I felt so honored that I got to introduce them to the original source material and show them this amazing movie. And at the end, we talked about which one they preferred, and 100% of them preferred the book. It was like the best day of my life. I was like, are you serious? They thought the movie was just too goofy, which now that I look at it from their angle, I get it. I mean, it's a great book. Anyway, so they do a compare and contrast, and we take notes along the way because they know that we're going to be doing this. So that's another thing I've done as well when I read something else. One year for sixth grade, we read Hatchet. So you have like a evidence tracker, and you have them, when they find a piece of evidence that speaks to the theme or whatever you want them to write about, you have them stop and write about it, and they have a tracker, so they have it all there. So by the time you get to the end of the book, it's not like they have to start over from scratch to now write an essay. They already have all their notes ready, and they can flip through and decide, okay, which 2 or 3 of these really does show what the theme is. And remember, the theme is like the moral or what we learned from a fable. So again, that's all connected to what we previously did. So these are skills that are building on each other. And then we move on. Before the end of the first semester, we do informative essays, and I typically do a visual formative essay where they do a 5-slide thing or infographic style. They still have to do their paragraph, but they need some kind of visual. It's either an image or a drawing or an infographic on every single slide to go with their topic. So they don't feel like they're writing a 5-paragraph essay at all. They are. They don't know that, but I'm not going to tell them. So they love, finding the visuals to go with it and then designing it and all that. And this is where because they're not, like, you've kind of tricked them in a way into doing an essay for you, I can really dig in to all the parts of an essay that I want them to use, which is like, I'm really going to get into that HIT introduction that I use, the hook, the introduce the topic, and then your thesis, or in this case, it would be your topic sentence where they're explaining what they're going to talk about in this essay without saying, in this essay, I'm going to talk about. We don't do that anymore. So that's semester 1. And now we come back from Christmas break. And at this point, they're ready to argue. It is argument writing time. And that is where we dig into all parts of claims and evidence and reasoning. Even though we've been working on CER writing, I'm going to do a whole episode just on CER writing because we need to dig into that. This is the perfect time for argument writing when they come back. They've had a break, they've got some stamina, they have some structure to the writing that they've done, they've learned a lot so far. We've already worked on claim and evidence and reasoning all throughout, scattered throughout semester 1, so now we're kind of ready to come back in and put it all together. So we're reading mentor texts and dissecting the arguments from those. We spend like a lot of time reading and looking at different arguments, but I don't do the essay in a workshop. We just do all the reading and the talking about it beforehand, and then we stop everything and we take 10 days and write our arguments. So, like before we start an argument essay, I might take a poll like, how many of you think we should start school later in the morning? And then somebody inevitably will always use that as their topic. And then we do another poll at the very end of it to see how their opinions have changed. And that's something you could do when they do their argument essays, when if they present it. I give them bonus points for presenting because later they have to share one out. That's a speech grade. But for this one, it's bonus points. And so they always do a before poll and after poll on whatever their topic is. They would ask the class, okay, what's your opinion on this? And then they give their speech. And then we see, did you move the class one way or the other? And before we step away from this argument writing section here, I want to read you one more thing. This literally is a different student. But in my Facebook group, I sometimes will go in there and share things that students have written, or, we share growth with each other and milestones and all that. And I'm going to read something to you that I wrote and put in the group a little while back. It says, all that work that we put into teaching them the value of strong hooks finally pays off right around this time each year. We're in full argument essay season, weaning them off the simple rhetorical question bottle. And it's difficult, but it is so worth it. This student, the one I'm about to read you in a second, is possibly my quietest. She rarely asks questions, but she is there day after day listening and soaking it up. And she nailed this hit introduction. So now I'm going to read this introduction to you from my student who rarely even spoke to me. Okay, here we go. Imagine waking up every day just to do one thing, and that happens every single day like it's a rhythm and a song. It's to the point where you forget about your very own family. Hundreds and hundreds of children around the world are waking up to do one thing carelessly, and some are even staying up just to use their phones and other devices. It gets addictive as they grow up. One question that every parent has to ask themselves is if too much screen time will ever help their children when they're all grown up. Children should have time limits on their screen time because it can cause poor sleep quality or even heart health problems. You don't want that to happen to your child, do you? Ah, oh my gosh, Kermit like flailing his arm. I was so excited when I read this. It was like finally everything that I had said had clicked in. So writing that hook where it is intriguing, we don't know what the topic is at once. We're like waking up to do the same thing every day, like a rhythm and a song. Wow. And then leads us to her thesis that children should have time limits because, and then she gives us two amazing reasons: poor sleep quality, heart health problems. It's an amazing argument that she set up. And so an argument essay, it takes a lot of skills that you have to pull together. So I would not start out the year with argument essays. So in my opinion, they're fantastic when you come back from winter break. Now, moving on, we do sort of, I guess I'd say the final essay, which is narrative writing. I don't limit it to personal narrative. So they could write something from their own life, but they could also create something that they imagined. But it just has to feel so real that it could be true. Because, and let's do a little sidebar here. I feel like sometimes I'm the only one reading the standard like this because when we meet in our meetings and stuff to talk about narrative writing, everybody is talking about it as if they're writing just a personal narrative. But if you read the standard, in fact, I'm going to pause you again. I'm going to grab the standard. Hold on. Stay right there. And I'm back. All right. So it says, write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, relevant descriptive details, and well-structured event sequences. So it says right there that they're developing real or imagined experiences. So here's what I have them do. I tell them that it could be imagined or it could be a combination, which is that's what I did as an author. I took a lot of the stuff that happened to me personally and put it into a fictional story that felt so real that it could have been real. And that happens to me a lot. The book that I wrote, Confessions from the Principal's Kid, I often, when I would go speak, they would say, was that all a true story? What was true and what wasn't? They were dying to know what was true. Several things in there were very true. And so the fun part of this is that you tell them that they get to choose in their mind, is this real or imagined or a mix? And when they're done, those who want to read and share, or they share out in their trio, we listen and we guess which one this is. Is this real? It's sort of like, two truths and a lie. It's like, which one is real or not real? And they love listening to each other's stories and trying to figure out, was this made up? So the ones that make a story up that feels like realistic writing, when they trick us, they are like, you can just see they're beaming. They just absolutely love that they have tricked us into thinking that this was a real story. And that's the key to being a good writer, is to take your reader through an experience. And one of the things I talk about a lot is having our students think far more about the reader experience and less about the teacher and the grade that they're going to get. Because once they just lean into that experience, everything will start to fall into place. So the reason why I wait to the end is because there are so many skills that they have to have all together in this symphony, like I said. So they have to have voice. They're going to have to have an amazing hook. I want their sentence complexity to be stellar. I want at least 2 similes. I want hyperbole. I want really vivid imagery. I want you to show, don't tell. And this is where show, don't tell comes up, like prime center in the middle there in the spotlight. Like, I want to see bodily action. I want to see how their face is reacting, how their shoulders are moving. Are they slumping? You're using verbs that are showing emotion, all that stuff. That's hard. And that takes layers of revision to get. So I would give them the most time and attention and like, this is it, you guys. This is where you get to show me what you can do. So get excited about that narrative unit. It can be amazing and so much fun. Now, after they've done that narrative writing, that's when we typically have state testing. And the week before, the way I kind of pace this out is typically their narrative is in, I think, March. And then in April, they do one final writing skills assignment for me, which is a mirror of the one that I gave them the first week of school. So the first week of school, I tell them to write about a time that they were surprised. And that's what I got from that first student that was actually the example that I read you at the beginning of this episode. The first one was I was surprised when he went on this ride at Universal. And the second one was being surprised. The story was about kindness and being surprised that kindness comes in, places that you wouldn't expect it, which is amazing. So they respond to the same prompt, write about a time you were surprised, and show me everything you can do. Like, this is, the final game, the championship game. And then I don't tell them this. This is all secret, but I've kept that original piece. And the day or two before state testing, I put together in Class Kick, I go in there and I paste them all in there for them. And I put their surprise writing from the first week of school and their surprise writing from March or April by the time we get to it. And I show them their growth, and most of the time, they don't remember what they wrote that first week, and they look at themselves from the beginning to now, and they are, like, shocked. Their jaws drop. They're like, "Whoa, that was me? Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe it." And they just laugh, and then they show each other their work, and then I tell them, "And, guess what? You're going into state testing, and this is all you have to do. You just need to go in there and show them what you know now. Like, look at everything you know." And they go into state testing just absolutely glowing because you've shown them what they've accomplished this year. So then when you come out of testing, um, and you'll find often, when they talk about the things that they wrote, almost every time in state testing, there's a narrative, or it seems like it's either a narrative or argument, typically is what comes up. So narrative writing is hugely important in state testing. But my kids always come back feeling confident about the writing. In the past years, I've had the majority of them say, "Yeah, I felt really good about it," which is it's so great. That's such a gift to give to them, is of confidence. Like, you can do this. And then at the end of the year, we do a big wrap up student choice project where it's like a culmination of everything that we've done. It's called a 5-slide final, and that one is where they're going to try and convince us of something. And I took a phrase that my son once used, and it was criminally underrated. He was talking about this band or something, and he was like, "Oh, they're just criminally underrated." And I was like, "I love that. Can I make a whole project around it?" So I did. And they will take something that they love, that they feel like more people should love, but they don't, and they're going to make an argument for it. And so they have to do research. They have to include videos. They have to find recordings. They have to get links to, this K-pop band and interview. And they're making this multimedia interactive slideshow with lots of writing and lots of graphics. And then they all have to share them out. That's their big speech grade at the end. But they're so motivated because they love it. And we do the same thing where we do a poll before and we do a poll after. And almost always the kids are more inclined to try the thing out or listen to the music or whatever. It's pretty cool. So if you've been starting every year with narrative essays, if possible, could you flip it? Do you have the ability to switch it to the end and try something else at the beginning? And if you do, will you let me know how it goes? And I just want you to pay close attention this year. If you do that, what happens? Do you notice a difference in the quality of the narrative writing that you're getting from them? And so it's sort of like if you are weightlifting, right? Whenever you weightlift, you don't want to start with the heaviest bar. You start with the lightest one. So that's why I kind of start with that fable, because it's the easiest way in, really. And then we build that muscle and we practice and we get better and we build on those skills and we get that confidence. And that's where we can start layering in complexity. And by the end, you've got this symphony for your amazing narrative story. Your students will love it if you switch it this way. If they don't, please tell me, or maybe not. Don't tell me that. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Paragraph. If you're looking for any ready-to-go lessons that follow this exact order of these essays, you can look below for a link. And I have a year-long planner as well that you can grab that shows you how I map it out through the year. And I talk about how I backwards plan so you can fill in your own chart the way that you want to do it for your standards. And the standards are all listed in there and everything. So look in the show notes, there's tons of cool stuff down there. And I have a new YouTube channel that is student-led, like student facing videos. So if you want to teach them more about these skills, but you want to supplement it or have them do some of the stuff on their own, go to Write with Robin on YouTube and you will get skills lessons there from me. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Be sure to follow Beyond the Paragraph wherever you get your podcast and share this with a teacher bestie. They will love you for it, and so will I. To go deeper and learn more about the structured writing method, go to structuredwritingteacher.com.